And I have to start all over again. Thank you, Joe Butler, for saving my bacon. Welcome to live TV. Hadn't got the microphone switched on. Well, what do you know? I was sitting there going, welcome to the Mythical Ireland Library. I'm Anthony Murphy. This is Book Talk, episode 15. Tonight we are dealing with Proinsias Mac Cana's best-known work, first published in 1970. It's called Celtic Mythology. And it's an exciting book and a must-have for the serious scholar of Irish and Celtic mythology. You're all very welcome to the library this evening. I hope you're all keeping safe and well. If you're in Ireland, you have been enjoying something of not just a sunny spell, but a heat wave. In fact, it's not very often that we can boast that we have as good, if not better weather than those who are in the resorts on the south coast of Spain. Good evening to everyone. A word of warning, last time we had a live stream, we had significant issues with the Facebook feed. It was stodgy for some reason. That was completely out of my control. There's nothing here that I can adjust. There are no knobs and levers that I can play around with to make the Facebook feed better. If you're having problems with Facebook, you can transfer to YouTube, and it's youtube.com/Mythical Ireland. It's the channel, and it'll be easy enough to find because it'll be the top item saying Mythical Ireland is live now. If, on the other hand, which is rare enough, you happen to have an issue with the YouTube feed, don't forget you can revert to Facebook. We're on facebook.com/Mythical Ireland and also on the Mythical Ireland community. I should say that those of you who are watching on the Mythical Ireland community have to know that I cannot read your comments on Mallon app here on the screen. I don't know why that is. I've tried to get them to talk to each other and they won't. I do apologize. Daisy Peters is saying hello. Hello, Daisy. Welcome to the show. Judy McQueen is in the house. Hello, Judy. Welcome along. Falcha. Larissa Kama says, oh, yes, we've rectified that now, I hope. Yes, indeed, Genevieve. Thank you all. You're so kind for telling me about the lack of sound. And I hope that is sorted now. Erica Rivertree is in the house. Hello, Erica. Falcha. Guji. Laurelyn Shaw. In Rehed Aha. Kundinalu. Very close to Kundinami. Tommy Magoni Drehad Aha. Susan Scott says, oh, you're back. Had no sound. Yes. Simple things. I didn't have the microphone switched on. Stupid me. Robert Friend says, Falcha, Anthony Antua, August Falcha, Tufain, Robert, Patricia McAteer. Yes, lots of people examining their devices, turning the volume knobs on the speakers and pressing the volume on their phone. No need to worry. All mea culpa. Mea culpa. Silly me. Anne McCallum is in the house. Hope everyone's well and enjoy more pleasant and stable weather than what's been thrown at us lately. Methinks mother is losing patience and father is none too pleased. Yeah, Irish people are so typical. We spend the whole year complaining about it being cold or windy or raining. And then when we get a hot spell after a couple of days, everybody's complaining about the heat. There's just no pleasing us. Michael Pike is in the house. Slánte Avicoil, Hunasatatu Mochara. Sabina Fiery O'Reilly says, good evening. Trinonawa. Sabrina Hunasatatu. Mandy McCurl is in the house, waiting for YouTube to start. Oh my God. Oh, okay. It's all right. Stephen Walker is saying greetings from Atlanta, Georgia on YouTube. So YouTube is obviously working. Anne Scott Doherty, who is in County Clare, who I had the pleasure of meeting. One of the very few, I have to think about this. Are you the first sort of non-Irish resident member of the Tuatha that I've met in person since the live streams began? I think you might be, Anne. Anyway, it's great to see you. I hope Clare is nice down there. It's my last night here. Oh, I won't be able to come back for a few months, but I'll still be tuning in back in Oregon. Oh, well, safe home, Anne. And don't forget, yes, absolutely, come back to the old sod. Joe Butler says it's sunny and warm in Colorado. So it seems that Ireland and Colorado are having the same weather today. Catherine Woodruff is saying hello. Slánte, Catherine, Conasatatu. Daisy is ready for another fascinating episode. Well, I hope it lives up to your expectations. Aaron Solomon says, greetings, Anthony. How is you? I is fine, Aaron. Thank you for asking. How are you? Sue Prenter is in the house. Hello, Sue. Slánte. Brendan Byrne. Whoa, I have that book. Fingers crossed, all seems well. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Brendan in Clara, close to Glondalluch, the Glen of the Two Lakes. There's Desiree. So happy to be back with everyone. I missed you all so much. Well, Desiree, I have to say, look, no reflection on your fellow Tua, but like things were a bit dull without you, you know. It's great to see you back. Great stuff. Our Archaeoastronomy database is in the house. Good to see you. And all your work in the background, which is fantastic. Steve Martinson says, be safe and be well. Hello to you, Steve. Morwena Blogs is here from Melbourne, Oz. Good morning to you. It must be really early there. As I'm always saying, it's ridiculous o'clock, but happy Tuesday morning to you from Monday evening here in the Boyne Valley. Barbara Murphy says, listening while digging a 10th century Hohokam. I do apologize for my pronunciation. Hohokam site near Tucson, Arizona. Sounds brilliant, Barbara. And my daughter is participating in an archaeological dig just outside Drogheda here, which you may have seen some of my pictures and videos from recently. Mariana Dunn is in Virginia. Great to be gathered again. Yes, indeed it is, Mariana. Welcome along. Larissa, that's a very good complaint that you've been too busy because you've started a new business. Well, the very best of luck with, pardon me, your new business. I hope it goes really well. Jack is in California. Hello, Jack. And again, we're having the same kind of weather. It's brilliant. Cahill Mac says, watching in a sunsplit Quilty, County Clare. Brilliant stuff, Cahill. Good evening to you. Welcome along. The Curious Celt is in the house. Hello to you. Welcome along. The full Irish Gary or Jerry. It's Gary, isn't it? Giagwich, great and good to cheese and rice. It's too hot on the sod today. You see, there's no such thing as too hot. It's just we dialed up the temperature a little bit and we like it. Teresina is saying hello from Mayo, a resident formerly of the Boyne Valley, and I hope you still cheer for Louth in the GAA. Tarini Pendleton is in Laguna Beach in California. Great to see you along, Tarini. Jim Langton is in Leixlip. Hello, Jim. Fáilte go G on Clara Shaw. AJ says, hello from the Great Lakes. Sounds fabulous. Send us some pictures. AJ, great to have you along. Tom King is in the house. Hello, Anthony All the Mighty, too. I hope all in good form. Dram, topped, and ready for story time. Enjoy, my friends. We certainly shall do our best, Tom. Always good to see you in the house. Irish Technical Thinker says, Giariv to everyone. Keith is in Holland and says, hello, good evening to you. Great to see you. Welcome along to the library. Neil Hughes, Trenonawa from Coatbridge, Scotland, from Mary and Neil. Bhí Grinom ag sculpture na gloch here in Coatbridge. The sun was splitting the stones, or was splitting the stones. It's just a little bit cooler now as the sun heads towards the horizon. And Helen is in smoky South Dakota. I hope it's not smoky because of wildfires or anything like that. I hope it's not too close to you and too uncomfortable. Cairns Way is in South Kerry, a beautiful part of the world, by the way. Welcome along. Train on the Irk is in the house. Fáilte, Traina, great to see you. Nick Eska Casterton is there. Wow. We have a lot of people along tonight, which is fantastic. Nice to see you all. Up Mayo. Ha! Hon Mayo. Ha! Ha! I'll tell you what, you needn't show your face around here again. It's not that there's ever much to cheer about when it comes to Louth. Karen Smith is in scorching West Cumbria, just across the water from us here. Karen, welcome along to the live stream. Jules Cousins is in the house. Hello, Jules. So a very quick note, if you're watching this afterwards on YouTube, please don't complain about me saying hello to people. It's happening all the time now. If you don't want to be part of the live stream, all you need to do is fast forward 10 minutes and you'll get to the start of the thing. And, you know, there's no need to leave a nasty comment. This is part of the atmosphere of the live stream, is that we have, since it began, we have said hello to each other and made each other feel like a community. If you don't like that, then don't complain about it. Just use the fast forward button. There you go. Rose Corraine is in the house. Hello, Rose. Welcome along. Kieran Cotter says hi to all the clan. Hi, Kieran. Welcome along. Mark Gordon is in Iowa. Coffee in hand and ready for story time. Brilliant stuff. Where do you start? Love the community hellos. Well, I mean, that's a big part of it. I mean, it's the whole reason really I set about doing it in the first place was to give people some sort of respite, some shelter from all of the anxiety around the pandemic, which, by the way, is still ongoing. Our figures are they've gone up quite a lot in the past couple of weeks. In the past week, in particular, we have over 1,000 cases today. The Delta variant sweeping through the countryside. So look after yourselves. And I'm one of the lucky ones. I have my double vaccine, and I am considered to be fully vaccinated, which is great. Before we get on to the main show, Kathleen is in California. Hello, Kathleen. Welcome along. Good afternoon to you from the sunny Boyne Valley. And somebody's saying sorry to Helen. What was wrong with Helen? Okay, Oregon and California. Yes, our very best wishes to anybody who has the wildfires or the forest fires at the moment. There you go. Desiree says it best. Yes, because of our hellos, we have all made lifelong friends indeed. And if you are watching on YouTube afterwards and you haven't been part of the live stream and you're kind of wondering about the hellos, why not join us on a live stream and say hello? And then your name will be immortalized in the video. You see, that's how it works. We're all friendly on here, but we have had on occasion nasty people and trolls, and we've had to boot them out. As we say in Ireland, it's all right to be nice all the time, but occasionally you do have to tell someone to F off. And sorry if that sounds very straight, but that's how it is. Before we get on to the main show tonight, our last live stream was one to announce the arrival into the library of the first printed copies of the second in the Mythical Ireland Monograph series, and that is Boyne, the Goddess of the River Boyne and the Milky Way, to complement what was the only one in the series up until now, which was Finn and the Salmon of Knowledge, Mythology, Toponymy and Cosmology. There now is a series. It consists at the moment of 2 volumes. I'm actually running low on Finn volumes, and the Bowen ones are flying out the door. If you want to get yourself a signed copy of the monographs, go to mythicalireland.com, go to Gallery and Shop. In the drop-down menu, you will see books, and go into My Books, and you will see them there, and you can order them. We do ship worldwide, and there's a rake of envelopes containing Bowen monographs, and a fair number of Finn monographs as well went out today, and another heap to go out tomorrow. So I'm hoping that by tomorrow evening, all of the pre-orders and all of the orders up to now will be out in the post, and they complement the first of the publications of the year, which is Return to Segish, a very, very mythopoetic, personal exploration of the myths and the monuments and the landscape of my beloved Boyne Valley, where I have grown up and which I am very, very privileged and proud to call home. So there you go, folks. Don't forget. You might notice a difference in the prices. I want to say something about if you're in the States, anywhere outside of Ireland, Britain and Europe, the price of postage has actually gone up since I announced this. So when you pre-ordered it, the amount of postage for the USA wasn't actually high enough, and I've had to increase it because the book costs 13 euros. The Finn monograph costs 10, right? The Bowen monograph costs 13. It's bigger, by the way. There's more in it, just in case you were wondering what the difference was. It costs 10 euros to post this booklet to the United States and anywhere outside of, as I said, Ireland, Britain and Europe. So that's Australia or South Africa or Japan or Russia or North, South America, Central America, Caribbean, wherever you are in the world, it costs a tenner to post a book that's worth 13. But of course, I know some of you are going to say it's worth a lot more than 13. It's not about price, it's about value, isn't it? That's what I like to say. But anyway, speaking of price and value, tonight's, what time are we on, by the way? We're on about 16 minutes, are we? Tonight's prized item, I bought secondhand, and even though it is a little bit tatty and has seen better days, I can assure you it is a treasure. It is Celtic Mythology by Proinsias Mac Cana, first published in 1970. This is, I'm not sure how much revision there was. This is a second impression. It may just have been a second print run. I think that's what second impression means. It's a large format book in that I think it's slightly bigger than A4, with a hardback cover and a dust jacket. Let me show you what the hardback cover looks like. And it even has this, I think that's Nodons. I think that figure is Nodons, if I'm not mistaken. Beautiful Wibbelin cover, which, as you know, from my return to Segish, I love the idea of a book that is protected by a dust jacket, but which still has a lovely hardback cover. A little bit about Proinsias Mac Cana. I was looking for scholarly stuff earlier, and you know what? I landed on Wikipedia, and I don't like using Wikipedia as a source, but it did have a fairly neat summary of him. Proinsias Mac Cana was born in Belfast in 1926. His parents were Catholic and supporters of Irish nationalism. He attended Queen's University Belfast, graduating with a degree in Celtic languages in 1948. After a year at Sorbonne, he completed a Master Arts degree at Queen's, where he was appointed an assistant lecturer in 1951. 2 years later, the university awarded him a doctorate, a PhD. In 1955, he moved to the University College of Wales in Aberystwyth as an assistant lecturer in Early Irish. In 1957, he was promoted to a lectureship. While there, he taught Old and Middle Welsh. In 1961, he was appointed Professor of Celtic Studies at the Dublin Institute of Advanced Studies, and 2 years later became Professor of Welsh at University College Dublin, where he became Professor of Early Irish in 1971. In 1985, he returned to the Dublin Institute to take up a senior professorship and retired in 1996, afterwards being appointed to emeritus professorship. He had been president of the Royal Irish Academy between 1979 and 1982. So he was a distinguished scholar. According to the Irish Times, McCana's main field of research was early Irish tales and the mythology informing them. And in this field, he was preeminent. He broadened and deepened the understanding of the links between the languages, cultures, and traditions of Celtic peoples of Ireland and Britain. And through his scholarship and teaching, he was an interpreter of the Irish to the Welsh and of the Welsh to the Irish. McConnell published widely and in retirement worked to restore his Collège des Irlandais in Paris. He died in 2004. So I should say something very briefly about Peter Woods is in the house. Sláinte, Peter, good to see you. Sandrine, bonsoir, Sandrine. I should say something about McConnell, and I should also say something about some of his peers of the time. McConnell, along with the likes of Miles Dillon and T.F. O'Rahilly, were, I suppose, the first sort of modern scholars to sort of really give us a sense of just how deeply ancient our mythology was. They were, I think, that generation of scholars who were satisfied that the mythology went back into pre-Christian times, into prehistory. Now, the scholars today have a slightly different outlook, and they look more critically upon the comparative stuff, especially when it comes to the influences that we're often talking about on these live streams in relation to what the monks may have imported from the continent in terms of epic lore that they encountered, and of course the biblical narratives and the biblical themes that seem to have been inserted into the Irish mythology. Nevertheless, I think the work of the likes of McCana and Dillon and O'Rahilly stands the test of time. Some of their theories may be put to considerable scrutiny these days, but it's just like one of those things. It's an ever-evolving picture. You can never just suddenly say, well, all of that's rubbish, and so we can put that to one side. And that, of course, is not the case with Proinsias Mac Cana and his colleagues. I would put Rhys and Rhys into that category too. They're wonderful. What's it called? Celtic Heritage. It was Celtic something. It was Celtic Cosmos, Celtic something, Celtic Heritage. So I'm going to read a little bit from Celtic mythology and pull out a few different sections that are relevant. There's plenty of Welsh stuff in there. There's some stuff about the Celts on the continent. I tend to focus a little bit less on that, as you can probably understand. We have already read from McConnell in relation to Maeve, I think, and maybe also Bridget. So I'm going to pick out maybe a couple of others that we can talk about in the meantime. So anyway, I hope you're all sitting comfortably, that you have the cup on tea in the hand, or something stronger if that's what you're into, Raymonda Lind in New Zealand. Wow, good morning to you. Yes, we haven't seen you in a while. All is good here. and we hope all is well with you. A very good morning. It must be literally the crack of dawn down there. In fact, it must still be dark, is it? We have this thing in amateur radio where we keep an eye on what we call the grey line, which is the line that crosses the earth. It's not really a line, it's more like a circle between daylight and nighttime, because at certain times the grey line is what can connect two countries in terms of good propagation. So at the moment, the grey line is just beginning to appear on the North Island of New Zealand, and it's about an hour away from us here. So there you go. It's just about to, the sun is about to come up over the horizon in New Zealand, and it's still here in Ireland. That's how far apart we are. But we're close because of the wonderful technology that we have. Let's start with a reading about the Second Battle of Moytura. So the book follows this format. The text is along the bottom. I just have to remember what page that is. That's page 59. In 3 columns. And the top portion of the page is taken up by these wonderful images. Not in all cases, as you can see. It's very well illustrated. Most of it's black and white. There are some color plates as well. As you can see, there are some color plates. But definitely, I mean, it's a real treasure. And it's a beautiful insight into, you know, how we thought you know, this is what, I mean, it's 1970s, what, 52 years ago. You know, when you think about it, it is now maybe what you might say a long time ago. There's the entrance of Newgrange, and that's the famous Turrow Stone in Galway. You can't see it like that anymore because they've built a structure or a shed over it. You have to look in a window at it now. There's the famous statue of Cuchulainn in the GPO, the General Post Office in Dublin, and some dolmens. There's Ben Bulben in Sligo. Anyway, let's get on with a little bit of reading. Actually, we should probably read the section about the Tuatha Danann. I mean, let's be honest. Are we biased or what? But I mean, I would say that the Tuatha Danann are our most popular topic of conversation. Thrush is singing in the tree near dawn. Brilliant stuff. Sounds lovely. Just dawn in NZ, says Marie. Are you in New Zealand as well? Conas tá she go there. Tá me go ma. I can't speak on everybody's behalf, Marie, but it's great to see you. Yes, indeed, many countries had giants. What does it mean? You know? Full Irish. Yes, thank you. Gary is welcome, reminding us, don't forget to like and subscribe. Like and subscribe if you're on YouTube, and don't forget to like the page if you're on Facebook. The Tuatha Danann, the Book of Invasions is how he starts it, which is fascinating because that's the cosmology, isn't it? I was saying in my interview with Lear Media TV the other day, I shared that link on the Facebook pages, but maybe you want to go and look at it afterwards. I spent an hour or a little over an hour conversing with Mary Honan, and one of the things we touched on in the conversation was, the glasses are crooked, was cosmology, because there's 2 types of cosmology. There's cosmology as in what is the origin of the universe, you know, the study of the structure and the origin of the universe. But then there's a religious or a mythological cosmology. That's the second meaning. I think it's the first, actually, which is, you know, a culture or a community or a tribe's story about its origins. And unfortunately, there's a tendency to, in scholarly work now, today, I would say there's a tendency to look at Lawer Gawala and the way it begins with the dispersal of the nations and the arrival of Kesser, the granddaughter of Noah, as being our cosmology. But look, it I believe, is contrived and imported. I believe that the cosmology more closely pertains to the stories such as the drowning and dismemberment of Bowen, which is, I believe, a very, very ancient creation myth, and which is covered in detail in the new Bowen monograph. The Book of Invasions. The Celts have left no native myth of the world's creation, and I actually disagree with McConnell on that, and he's not the first one to say that. James McKillop said it in one of his works, and there are others who've said it. I disagree with that. I think it's just that we haven't recognized those tales of cosmogony that we actually have, but they've become not so much, well, maybe diluted, but the focus has been taken off those in favor of this contrived cosmology, which basically tells us that we have biblical origins, and that you have to go back to the Great Flood, in which, Noah took everybody into his ark except for his granddaughter Kezer, who he told to go to Ireland or someplace where there was no sin, and that's why she came here. And the rest, as to say, you'll have to find out about in another episode. So the first sentence he utters, I disagree with him. I can tell you that ain't going to be the case throughout. Excuse me. The Celts have left no native myth of the world's creation, though it would be strange if they lacked one. And of course, he almost indeed instinctively knows himself that it's probably there. We just haven't recognized it yet. Caesar speaks of the Gaulish Druids' concern with the nature of the material universe, as well as with the powers of the gods. And it may be that he had heard of such a cosmogony at second hand. If so, it is to Irish tradition that one would naturally look for the evidence. And unfortunately, though understandably, Irish tradition is here defective. For the monastic scholars who in the late 6th and 7th century set about compiling a record of the Irish people and its origins were no mere amanuenses. There's a word I've never seen before. That doesn't happen very often. Amanuenses. Amanuenses. There you go. I've never seen it before. Every day is a learning day, which is why you like to have a library, because you learn more words. To native tradition, their guiding purpose was to accommodate this tradition within the framework provided by the Bible and early Christian historians like Eusebius and Orosius. And to this end, they doctored it and grafted it on to the Christian account of man's origins. And I think that sums it up very, very aptly. Exactly. They grafted it onto the Christian account, and they doctored it to suit their own worldview. And we have said that so many times on these live streams, haven't we? There are some scholars, modern scholars, as it were, contemporary scholars, who would say that a lot of the mythology was actually imported. Look, I don't accept that for a moment, and I think you've heard all my arguments about it, Lar is in the house. Lar Herbert. Hello, Lar. I didn't see you there. Zavi Liras, is that a correct pronunciation? I hope it is. You're very welcome along. And hello, Lar, as well. Good to see you in the house. Adam became the ancestor of the Irish as of the rest of mankind, though, as we've already seen, Dun was not forgotten, D-O-N-N. This rewriting of tradition was progressively elaborated during the following centuries until finally, in the 12th, it culminated in the pseudo-history entitled Laura Gawawa Éireann, the Book of the Conquest of Ireland, commonly known as the Book of Invasions. The conquest of the title refers, no doubt, to the arrival of the Gaels, that is, the Milesians, but in the extant compilation, this is in fact the last of a series of 6 immigrations. The first of these preceded the flood and was led by Kezer, who was a daughter of Bith, son of Noah, or alternatively by Banva, one of the eponyms of Ireland. All perished in the flood except Fintan, who survived through many ages and through the successive invasions in the form of a salmon, an eagle, and a hawk, and was consequently invoked as a witness to the events of the Irish past. And of course, Fintan is a very major inspiration for, I don't have a copy immediately reachable, for my novel, The Cry of the Sebach. Next came Partholan and his followers. He fought a battle against a race of demonic beings known as Fomore, or the Fomorians, and this was the first battle fought in Ireland. He cleared 4 plains. Hitherto there had been only one in Ireland, and during his time 7 lakes appeared. He also instituted many crafts and customs for the first time. The first guesting house was built. Excuse me. The first beer and ale brewed. Legal suretyship was established for the first time, and so on. Finally, he and his people were wiped out by a plague, and of course, they were said to have been buried at Tala in Dublin, the old name of Tala being Tala Muncher Partholone, the graves of the men of Partholone. Good evening to Robin Rickman. Dropped in to say hi. My kids' book club and preparing for school. I've missed everyone. Have a good evening. I will watch a replay. Good to see you, Robin, and good to be able to give you the mention. Marianne Kindia is in the house from Connecticut. Welcome along. The third invasion was led by Nevid, the Nemedians. 4 lakes were formed in his time, and 12 plains were cleared. It is evident that this and the preceding invasions were conceived of as imparting to the land of Ireland its geographical definition and identity. And aren't we seeing something here in the clearing of plains and the bursting forth of lakes, etc., a sort of cosmology? You know, perhaps this is closer to the original stuff, and the Khazer stuff was bolted on at the beginning as a sort of a way of introducing, you know, our supposed links to Noah and the Bible. By creating its physical features and assigning names to them, they may be said, in a mythological sense, to have brought it into existence. And there you go, bringing it into existence. That's the cosmology. That's the first time, you know. However, much of the detail of these invasions may be late invention. This conception, at least, seems old. Very sapient observation there by Proinsias Mac Cana. After Nevid's death, his people lived under the sway of the Favore, and each year on the Feast of Samhain, the 1st of November, they had to pay a tribute of 2/3 of their corn, their milk, and their children. At last, in desperation, they rose against their masters and attacked their island stronghold. But only one boat's complement of 30 men survived the battle, and of these, one section went to Greece and another to the north of the world. It is from these remnants Nevid's people that the next 2 settlements of Ireland supposedly derive. Those of them who went to Greece multiplied and eventually returned to Ireland, where they constituted the peoples known as the Fervolog, the Gallion, and the Fergovnan, or the Ferdownan. It is with the DH, it's lenited in such a way as DH is pronounced as a G, which is really odd, I know. There is no longer any mention of lakes being formed or plains cleared. The historical land of Ireland is already a reality, and appropriately, the main innovations credited to the Fervolog are socio-political in character. They divided the country into 5, thereby instituting the provinces. Irish Coige, a province, literally a 5th. These comprise Ulster, Leinster, Munster and Connacht, representing the 4 cardinal points, together with Meath, which consisted of an area around the centre of the country at Uisneach. And as I'm always saying and joking to the modern GAA supporters, it's so ironic that Uisneach is now in Westmeath and it used to be in Meath. This division, as the brothers Rees have pointed out, the aforementioned Rees and Rees of Celtic heritage, reproduces a 5-fold conception of the world, which is more or less universal and is particularly well attested in India and China. And I think there we are seeing hints at a cosmology, a very ancient cosmology as well. The Fervolog also introduced kingship and the notion of its sacred character. One of their kings, Yochi Mac was the prototype of the just ruler. Quote, no rain fell during his reign, rain, different rain, but only the dew. There was no year without harvest. Falsehood was banished from Ireland during his time, and he it was who first established the rule of justice there, unquote. Thus is created the rapport, fundamental to the concept of sacral kingship, that exists between the righteousness of the ruler and the prosperity of his kingdom. Equally indicative of the new order with its warrior aristocracy is the fact that Yochi was the first king to be slain by a weapon. Oh, they're all here. They're all here. I don't know who that is that's asking. When it says Facebook user, that means it's coming from the community page where I can't see who is saying it. Yes, there's quite a few faces here that we haven't seen in a while. Actually, it's a nice little gathering tonight. Whose birthday is it? Kathy May Deo is saying happy birthday to somebody. Whose birthday is it? And I can't see whose birthday it is. Well, whoever's birthday it is, happy birthday from all of us to you. I hope it's a good one. In view of this role assigned to the Firvolg in the creation of the classical Irish social system, it is perhaps significant that they are the first of the Leabhar go Bhála settlers with a foot, albeit a rather unsteady one, in history. The Gaillon are identified with the lion who gave their name to the province of Leinster, that's Laighin, and the Firgovnan or Downan, who are attested mainly in Connacht, are no doubt related to the Dumnonii of Britain, Dumonii. It seems clear that at this stage, history and mythology coalesce within the framework of the ancient invasion legend. The next invaders were the Tuatha Danann, the people of the goddess Danu, who had become skilled in the arts of druidry and magic during their sojourn in the northern islands of the world. They brought with them 4 talismans, the stone of foil or the Leofoil, which shrieked under a lawful king, the spear of Lu, which ensured victory, the sword of Nuadu, from which none could escape, and the cauldron of the Dagda, from which none would go unsatisfied. On their arrival, they demanded battle or the kingship from the Firvolg, and from this ensued the first battle of Moytura, in which the Firvolg were defeated. But the Tuatha Danann did not enjoy their supremacy for long unchallenged. Soon they were compelled to do battle with the ancient adversary, the Favora. Pardon me while I take a little drink, and it's totally non-alcoholic, I swear. Whose birthday is it? Yes, happy birthday. People are still saying happy birthday, and I'm not sure. Oh, it's Paul Gowron's birthday. That's whose birthday it is. Yes, indeed. Happy birthday, Paul, who I don't think is here. Am I right? Thank you. Yes. Kathy is now. Yes, indeed. Paul, happy birthday to you. And many more of them. Hope you're having a great day and you're being spoiled rotten as you deserve. Where were we? Yes. Then we come to the second battle of Moytura. As well as the references in Leabhar go Bhála, there is an independent epic account of this battle, which constitutes one of the most important sources of Irish mythology. You may or may not have seen it, but when we're finished, you might want to go back and have a look at the YouTube channel, where you'll see a recently posted video called The First Kings of Tara, and a lot of that is derived from the story of the myth of the Second Battle of Moytura. So you might enjoy that one if you haven't seen it already. The origins of the conflict and its development are there recorded. During the first battle of Moytura, that in which the Firvolg were defeated, Nuada, king of the Tuatha, lost an arm. And since physical defects were incompatible with the ancient concept of kingship, it was necessary that he should be replaced. The choice fell, rather oddly it might seem at first glance, on Prentiss the Beautiful, whose father Elatha was king of the Favora, but who was reared among the Tuatha, his mother's kin. In other words, his mother was Tuatha Danann, his father was Fomorian. That's a recipe for something anyway, isn't it? Soon, however, Prentiss's rule became oppressive and the country fell in thrall to the kings of the Fomorians. The Dagda was reduced to digging and building a fort for Prentiss, and Ogma, another of the great luminaries of the Tuatha Danann, to fetching firewood. Moreover, Prentiss lacked what is the mark of every true king: generosity. The chiefs of the Tuatha complained that, quote, their knives were not greased by him, and however often they visited him, their breaths did not smell of ale, unquote. Coda is obviously looking for ale. There was no entertainment for them in the royal household, no poets, musicians, acrobats or buffoons or bragator. We mentioned that in one of our recent live streams, that I thought I had imagined it, but it hadn't done. There was a type of entertainer in medieval Ireland called a bragator, which was another word for a professional farter. I kid you not. In the end, in the rear end, retribution was hastened, as so often afterwards in Irish tradition, by a poet's verses. When Coibre, the poet of the Tuatha, was received by Bress with scant hospitality, he retaliated with a magic-tipped satire, the first that was made in Ireland. Quote, and naught save decay was on Bress from that hour, unquote. The leaders of the Tuatha demanded that he should renounce the kingship, and he then set out to muster an army of the Favora in his support. In the meantime, Nuada had been fitted by Dian Cecht de Leach with an arm of silver and was reinstated in the sovereignty. And from that time forth, he was known as Nuadu Aragad Love, Nuada or Nuadu of the silver arm or the silver hand. Then follows the episode of Lou's arrival and his admission to the royal court. And this is the prelude to a curious exchange of roles. No sooner had Nuadu proof of Lou's polytechnic competence that he relinquished the royal seat to him, in the hope that he would lead the Tuatha to victory against the Favora. Under Lou's direction, preparations are set on foot, and each of the craftsmen and magicians of the Tuatha promises his own special contribution. The craftsman to fashion wondrous weapons, the sorcerer to hurl the mountains of Ireland on the Fomorians, the cupbearer to conceal from them the waters of Ireland's lakes and rivers, the druid to cast upon them 3 showers of fire, to deprive them of 2/3 of their strength and valour, and to bind in their bodies the urine of men and horses. Once the battle was joined, the slaughter was great on both sides. But whereas the slain of the Favora remained so, those of the Tuatha were cast into a well, over which Dian Cecht and his 3 children sang spells, and by its magic efficacy they were restored to life. Isn't it just wonderful, folks? It's supposed to be Sláine as well. That's what, and I often wondered whether there's any connection with Slane there. Sláine, you know, Sláine was king of the Fir Bolg, who's buried at Slane. But apparently this Sláine as well is out west or up in Sligo, somewhere close to the battlefield of Moytura. Lou also had recourse to his magic powers, moving around the men of his army, quote, on one foot and with one eye, unquote. He chanted an incantation to lend them strength and courage. Samantha Healy's in the house. Hello, Samantha. Welcome along. Yes. Yeah, Bragator. I think it's. I got it wrong when I was guessing it the other day. I think it's B-R-A-G-E-T O for the I or Bragator. And yeah, so perhaps there'll have to be a sort of an international professional farters competition for a gold medal to see who's the best. He thus assumed a characteristic posture of the sorcerer, and one which reproduced the monstrous form ascribed by tradition to the Favora, some of whom were seen as cyclopean with one eye in their foreheads, etc. He then faced the dreaded Balor of the baleful eye. Balor's eye was such that it required 4 men to raise its lid, and when uncovered, its venomous gaze could disable an army. But as soon as Lou saw the eye open against him, he cast a sling stone, which drove it through to the back of Balor's head, so that it wrought destruction on his own followers. And of course, our good friend Sean Fitzgerald, who was involved in the book Lugh na Bua, certainly in the artwork in that book, we know from that book that there was an alternative account of this battle between Lugh and Balor in Donegal, where Dunlewy, the poison glen, was supposed to have been formed when the poison gushed or flowed or oozed out of Balor's poisonous eye after Lugh had pierced it with a slingshot or a spear. The Favora were routed and expelled forever from Ireland. Of course, some of us would say, looking at current political situation, that perhaps they haven't been. But anyway, let's move swiftly on. Bress himself was captured, sought to save his life by promising, first, that the cattle of Ireland should always be in milk, and secondly, that there should be a harvest in every quarter of the year. But I think, judging by his previous miserliness, he shouldn't have been trusted in this regard. Both offers were rejected, thankfully, but he was finally spared in return for advice as to the proper times for ploughing sowing and reaping. So there you go. We have breasts to thank for the fact that, by the way, the harvest has begun here in Ireland in the past few minutes. Gareth McDonald, is that the Gareth McDonald from Drogheda that I know? Hello, if it is. Paul Garran, we were wishing you a happy birthday. Happy birthday. I see that you can't stay long, but that's because you've got a huge big cake with lots and lots and a big long rows of candles to blow out. You'll be like an Olympic candle blower. I'm not saying you're old or anything. You're in my sort of age bracket, so that means it's a little bit more than 18. It's 21 plus VAT. Anyway, a very happy birthday to you. I hope that you're spoilt rotten. I'll make cheesecake for everyone who offer to fill that position, lol, says Larissa. Brilliant, yes. Balor's Eye, says Donna Ferrer. I'm not sure if I mentioned you were here, Donna, but yes, yikes, absolutely, yes. This is in substance the story of the Second Battle of Moytura. Its mythological importance is obvious, its meaning rather less so. It has been argued. See you, Kathy May. We'll see you next time. And don't forget to watch the rest of the episode on YouTube later. It has been argued by T.F. O'Reilly. We mentioned T.F. O'Reilly as one of the scholars of this era at the time, early in the live stream, that the essential part of the tale is a myth of the slaying of Balor by Lu, and that the rest has been assembled artificially around this nucleus. And his argument is buttressed by the fact that such an opposition between an elder established deity and a younger and versatile rival was evidently a familiar one to Irish tradition. On the other hand, it is questionable whether the extant narrative of the Battle of Moytura can be plausibly reduced to this elemental theme, and it may legitimately be objected that O'Reilly has taken no account of the comparable traditions of theomachy from within the Indo-European field that had long since been referred to by earlier scholars. For example, an analogy has been drawn more than once between the Tuatha and Fomorians on the one hand, and the Devas and the Asuras of India on the other. In both these instances, the demonic powers wage a continual struggle against the gods and the cosmic order which they command, though in Irish tradition, as recorded, this contest has been given a historical cast and has become securely localized on Irish soil. Of course, if you take the Jungian view on that, Jung said that a lot of this stuff was, or he would have said that a lot of this stuff was archetypal, and that the reason that similar thematic ideas arise in epic mythology in different parts of the world isn't so much because they plagiarized and copied from each other, as so much as these were the images that objectively manifested themselves from the collective unconscious. You can study all of that for years. I've certainly given it a few years, and you'll never. I think you'll never come down fully on one side or the other. But it is interesting. It's always interesting to put an alternative hypothesis to what is just accepted among the scholars. In more recent times, the problem of the Second Battle of Moytura has inserted itself discreetly but firmly within the framework of Professor George Dumaisel's Structuralist comparative studies of Indo-European mythology. And this has led to certain penetrating and plausible suggestions regarding the inner meaning of the tale. So that comparative work is very, very important. Well, it doesn't necessarily give you all the answers. The kernel of Dumaisel's ideas on Indo-European mythology is his theory of the three functions. These, he claims, are the basis of a tripartite classification which manifests itself both in mythology and in social organization. The first function concerns the administration of the universe and has two aspects, the one magico-religious, the other rational and juridical. It sounds like both sides of the brain working, doesn't it? You know, and we're even getting an idea of perhaps Freudian and Jungian psychology here when we talk about the forces of evil being battled constantly by the forces of good as the two aspects, the antinomical or dichotomous polarized opposites that are actually in each of us, something I've been writing about lately. In the Indian context, it is embodied in the Brahman caste, and its two aspects are assigned to the gods Varuna and Mitra, respectively. The second consists in the exercise of physical force, primarily, quote, primarily but not solely of a warlike nature, unquote. It is embodied in the Kshatriya or warrior caste, I apologize if I've pronounced that wrong, and its divine personification is the god Indra. The third comprises all the manifestations of the notion of fertility, prosperity, health, fecundity in plant and animal life, peace, voluptuousness, and numerical weight. Pardon me. It is embodied in the Vaishya or farmer caste, and is promoted by a number of deities, of whom the most prominent are the Ashvins. But this inner system, Dumézil argues, is not merely Indian or Indo-Iranian, but Indo-European, and his constant endeavour has been to demonstrate its reality within the different societies and traditions of the Indo-European family, and presumably that, of course, would have included the Celts. And even though his researches have not been uniformly successful in this regard, the cumulative weight of the evidence shows beyond reasonable doubt that the formal recognition of some kind of tripartite classification based on functional differentiation is an inherent characteristic of the Indo-European heritage. Among the Celts, the stratification of Indian society is closely paralleled by the early Irish classification of druids, warrior nobles, flaha, and freemen, bo-ari, which in turn corresponds to Caesar's division of Gaulish society into druides, equites, and plebs. I like that word, plebs. We've used that, didn't we, last year in one or two of the live streams, and one in particular that descended into hilarity. On the other hand, the tripartite division of the Indian pantheon is not obviously paralleled among the Irish deities, though it should be pointed out that the extant record of the early Irish social system is undoubtedly more authentic and unadulterated than that of the Irish gods and their spheres of activity. Hope everybody's enjoying. What does fir mean, Donna? It literally means men. Fir men. So if you see toilets in Ireland, you'll see fir on one door and mana on the other, men and women. So the fir volug, some people say volug is, a bag, the bag men. Some say it's like pain in my volug. I have a pain in my stomach. The stomach men, I'm not really sure, to be honest. Plebs. Our school teachers called us plebs, says Irish technical thinker. Yes. Plebs, indeed. Yes, fir, the fir volug. Where was I? Even as the tradition stands, the Irish deities do not lack definable functions, but that these constitute or formally constituted a hierarchy of three distinct levels awaits clear demonstration. In point of fact, however, for the purpose of Dumézil's views on the Tuatha and the Second Battle of Moytura, it is only necessary that he should demonstrate a real distinction between the deities of the third function and the rest. For in a number of separate studies, he has argued persuasively that within the tripartite system, there is an inherent dualism which tends to unite the two higher functions in opposition to the third. This dualism gave rise to a myth which may be traced in several branches of Indo-European tradition, and which recounts how the gods of the lowest function were admitted to the community of the higher gods only after a struggle in which each side had threatened to destroy the other. Yes, it's like an accord, a peace accord, when two countries are at loggerheads and they're about to start lobbing missiles at each other, sending their armies over each other's borders, The politicians meet in some castle on a hill somewhere, barricaded and fenced off from the world, and sit down across the table and shout at each other for 10 days. And at the end of it, they shake hands, sign a piece of paper, and announce to the world that they've made peace. That is certainly what we hope will happen in all future such conflicts. He instances the Scandinavian tradition of the war of the Aesir and the Vanir and their subsequent reconciliation. The Aesir combine the gods of the first function, represented by Odin, and the second, Thor, while the Vanir embody the third, Njord, Freyr, and Freya. Similarly, he claims that the Second Battle of Moytura is but another reflex of the Indo-European myth. The Tuatha, when they arrived in Ireland, did not command all the competences necessary to a settled society. In the persons of their leaders, they had at their disposal druidic magic, the Dagda, warrior prowess, Ogma, the totality of arts and crafts, Lu, and the important techniques of medicine and smith work, Dian Kecht and Goivnu, or Govnu. That's our Tom King. But they completely lacked the third function in its most necessary form, agriculture. On the contrary, it fell to their opponents, the favore, to supply this lack, and this is epitomized in the agreement by which Bress is granted his life in return for the secrets of agricultural prosperity. And that's where suddenly that theory makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Our teacher called us baboons and dingbats. Yes, I remember it. When I was young enough, our teachers clobbered us. They hit us, and yes, physically beat us and slapped us and did all sorts of nasty things to us. And then the law was changed. You couldn't slap kids anymore. But some of the teachers for whom it was a lifelong habit couldn't break the habit. They still went on slapping kids after it was against the law. And if a teacher slapped a kid today, they'd be suspended on full pay pending an investigation, at the end of which they'd probably be taken to the High Court, cleaned out of it, and kicked out of their job for life. How things change in a generation, huh? Where was I? This interpretation leaves certain loose ends which have not gone unnoticed by Dumézil. In the first place, the battle ends in the total subjection of the favore, not in a reconciliation and fusion with the Tuatha, as the proto-myth would imply. And secondly, the favore are consistently pictured elsewhere in Irish tradition as demons, not as gods. Their name means literally under demons. That is to say, inferior or perhaps undersea demons. The answer proposed is that these inconsistencies with the postulated proto-myth are secondary and derive from their actual context. When the Battle of the Gods was included within the pseudo-history of the invasions and its primary significance obscured, the opponents of the Tuatha were confused with the favore, the traditional enemies of cosmic order, and this in turn entailed a change in the outcome of the struggle. Paula says, don't get me started on the nuns who taught us. Yes, we had Christian brothers. Some of them are grand and some of them weren't. But there you go. Come here, let's stay on subject, won't we? Because, it's not, I don't think it's conducive. I mean, we could have a whole conversation about Irish education in the 1970s and 80s, but I'm not sure how far it would get us. It might be more of a cathartic effort than anything. In favour of this line of argument, one may adduce the fact that the favore of the Second Battle of Moytura have personal links with the Tuatha Danann and are described in terms which are more appropriate to the latter than the monstrous favore of other texts. For this in itself strongly suggests that the opponents of the Tuatha in this particular battle were themselves gods. Dumézil's interpretation of the Second Battle of Moytura is not beyond controversy. Listen, nobody who deals in scholarly circles with any of this stuff, and even non-scholarly circles such as myself, nobody is in the area of non-controversy. Nobody is in the clear. Everybody's work is subject to scrutiny and flaws found therein. There is necessarily a subjectivity which has to be brought to bear in this regard, and that's just something I don't think that can be avoided. If you were to be entirely objective, you just laugh at it all and say it's preposterous and close the book and go on and do something else. Apart from Dumézil's interpretation of the Second Battle of Moytura is not beyond controversy, but nevertheless, it is highly plausible and has not the inconsiderable merit of recovering order and purpose from apparent chaos. Apart from its central thesis, it argues the existence of a coherent system of gods inherited from the Indo-European past, which has sometimes been disputed, and in this lies much of its there's a couple of pages of photographs, importance for the study of Irish and Celtic mythology. Yeah, so Movanwe, the Fervolog, are the men, or the bagmen or the stomach men. The Fomorians are the under demons. So the Fomorians would have been sort of ever present. The Fomorians battled with them in the first battle of Moytura. No, sorry, I apologize. I'm getting it wrong. The Fomorians are the only people in the pseudo-history, if you'd like to call it that, in the mythological pre-history of Ireland, who didn't actually arrive in Ireland. So you had Kildare and Partholon and Nemed and the Tuatha Danann and the Milesians, etc. You did not have an arrival by the Fomorians. They were ever present. The Firvolog were said to have arrived as descendants from the Nemedians who had scattered to Greece, and the Tuatha Danann were said to have arrived as descendants of the Nemedians who had scattered to the northern islands of the world. So just to distinguish that, the Firvolog were the enemies of the Tuatha Danann at the first battle of Moytura, also called Moytura Cong. The Fomorians were the ones with whom the Tuatha Danann battled at the second battle of Moytura, and that apparently marked their end. That was the end of them. That was the conclusion of their influence. The coming of the Gaels, and of course, we're going over old ground here to an extent, in that we have covered a certain amount of this in previous episodes of Live Irish Myths, and also in Book Talk. But I think every new voice that comes to it gives it a new gloss and a new angle. The coming of the Gaels. In the scheme of Laura Gowalla, that is the Book of Invasions, all that has preceded is merely by way of leading up to the advent of the sons of Meath, whose descendants, the Gaels, were henceforth to be the dominant people of Ireland. And this is what I was saying in a lot of my live streams and some of the things I've written over the past year or so, that it has long been said, and it has long been believed by the Irish people, that they are descended from the Gael, the Milesians. And if you were to take the Dananns as being, related to the monument builders of the Neolithic, and you were to hypothesize, as I have done, that the Milesians were the Beaker or the Bronze Age arrivers, genetically and culturally different, then this kind of makes a certain amount of sense, because we are all, most of us, in the modern Irish population, descended from the Bronze Age people, not the earlier Neolithic monument builders. The scholastic provenance of the account of the invasion is obvious. The sons of Meath come to Ireland from Spain because it was believed that Hibernia, the Latin name for Ireland, was derived from Iberia, while their father's name, Mil Hispania, is simply Latin Miles Hispaniae, soldier of Spain, in Irish dress. And I should say that if you were under any illusion, or you were doubting or questioning it, yes, Hibernia was the Roman or the Latin name for Ireland, and it literally meant winter. Hibernation is from the same Latin derivation because of the weather, basically, and the fact that it was located far enough north that the winter days are very short and the nights are very long. Conversely, at this time of year, we have lovely long days and short nights, but the nights are lengthening and the days are shortening as we speak. But despite its transparent fabrications, there is much in this account that is evidently traditional. The sons of Meath landed in the southwest of Ireland on the feast of Bealtaine, and as the poet Amergin set his right foot upon Ireland, he sang this poem, in which, like Vishnu's avatar Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, he claims to subsume all being within himself. By the way, I should point out, if you read the various recensions of Laura Gowalla relating to the Macmila, the sons of Meath, you will find that they arrived at the Boyne Estuary, and that's something that's very important to my own research. I am an estuary into the sea. I am a wave of the ocean. I am the sound of the sea. I am a powerful ox. I am a hawk on a cliff. I am a dewdrop in the sun. I am a plant of beauty. I am a boar for valor. And the next one, very important. I am a salmon in a pool. I am a lake in a plain. I am the strength of art. And so important was that, to return to Segish and to Amergin's story, in fact, that if you just go into the early pages of the book, opposite the dedications, you will see this. I'll refocus. I will try. Am he ilind. I am salmon in pool, Amergin Gloongal. And that's because my buddy Amergin said he was a salmon in a pool, which is what you're basically seeing on the cover of the book, is a salmon in the well of Segish eating the sacred hazelnuts, the knowe of wisdom that would lead him to become the salmon of knowledge. Having defeated the Tuatha Danann, the sons of Miel set out towards Tara. On their way, they encountered the three divine eponyms of Ireland. These are what we would call the tutelary or guardian goddesses, Banva, Fola, and Eru. Each of the three won from them a promise that the island would bear her name. What time are we on? We'll only be on an hour at around 20 past, and we'll call it a night then. To Amergin the Feely, who assured her that hers would be its principal name, Eru foretold that Ireland would belong to the sons of Miel for all time. But to Dun, their chief, who addressed her with scant courtesy, she announced that neither he nor his children would have benefit of the island. In the event, he was drowned off the southwest coast and buried on an island known ever since as Chech Dun, the House of Dun. And that's the one with the mysterious tunnel. And from the mainland, on the winter solstice, the sun sets and its beam shines through the tunnel towards the mainland. At Tara, the sons of Miel found the three kings of the Tuatha Dé, Macol, Macecht, and Magrania, husbands of the three goddesses, and called upon them to surrender the land. But instead, the kings reclaimed a respite and referred its conditions to the judgment of Amergin. The poet's decision was that the sons of Miel should re-embark and retire beyond the ninth wave, which, for the Celts, constituted a magic boundary. But when they sought to land again, the Tuatha Dé created a druidic wind which carried them out to sea. Then Amergin rose and addressed himself directly to the land of Ireland. I invoke the land of Ireland. And immediately the wind abated and the sea was calm. The sea was calmed, C-A-L-M-E-D. The sons of Miel came ashore and inflicted a final defeat on the Tuatha Dé at Talchu, site of the annual festival instituted by Lu. And all of that's been covered in episodes of Live Irish Myths. As yet, one cannot say with any assurance just how much of this account is pseudo-historical invention. It is easier to say what is not. Amergin, like Dun, is wholly mythological, and it is noteworthy that it is he who, as seer and arbiter, takes precedence of all the rest of the sons of Miel, something I reflected upon and referred to quite a lot in Return to Segish. It is he who ensures their landing by appeasing the divinity of Ireland, and who symbolizes the beginnings of their settlement by proclaiming himself the embodiment of all creation. And in his invocation of Ireland, as in the triad of eponymous goddesses married to the kings of Tara, we find eloquent expression of one of the dominant themes of Irish tradition, the personification of the land as a goddess who is joined in marriage to her rightful king. Farewell to Raymond de Lind, who must go away, and we hope that you not only catch up on the final part of the broadcast later, but that in fact that you return to join us again next week. It's so good to see you. Thank you. The retreat of the Tuatha Dé. Despite their defeat, the Tuatha Dé still retained the power of their magic arts, and they deprived the Gaels of their corn and milk until they forced them to come to terms. It was then decided that the country should be divided into two parts, the lower half, that is the one beneath the surface, not the southern half, the lower half going to the Tuatha Dé and the upper half to the Gaels. Thus, the Tuatha Dé retired underground, and the Dagda assigned to each of their chiefs a she or fairy mound. And throughout the countryside, such mounds are still regarded, or were until very recently, as the special dwelling places of the fairy people. Already in the late 7th century, a clerical biographer of St. Patrick refers to the she or gods who dwell in the earth. She'd out deorum terrenorum, thus evidently taking for granted the tradition that placed the native gods under the earth's surface. This modus vivendi serves to explain how the Tuatha Dé came to be securely established in the Irish landscape, living in close proximity to its human inhabitants, who are ever and always conscious of their presence. Theirs is the hidden face of Ireland, and it tends increasingly to reflect the features of the visible one. They have their local and provincial kings, and their whole social organisation resembles that of the human community. They have the same local loyalties, the same internal dissensions and petty warfare, and indeed, as this suggests, their divinity does not render them permanently invulnerable nor exempt from violent death. Yet paradoxically, the quality that most clearly sets them apart is their immortality, by virtue of which they live, quote, without grief, without sorrow, without death, without age, without corruption of the earth, unquote. If there is a contradiction here, it is not one which demands to be resolved by rational argument. One of the characteristics of the other world with which the Irish and Welsh imagination makes constant play is the relativity of time and space. Emulating our dear friend, Mr. Einstein. Perspectives are reversed and brevity becomes length, and length brevity as one crosses the tenuous border between the natural and the supernatural. And if you wanted an example of that, you just have to look at the Danann mythology of Sheed Broga or Newgrange, where Elkmar is sent on an errand that he thinks is only going to last for a day, but which in fact lasts for 9 months. No doubt the violent deaths of some of the Tuatha should be viewed in a similar light. At all events, it is clear that in this mythic environment where opposites combine and interchange, the Irish storyteller saw nothing amiss in the occasional mortality of the immortal gods. The other feature which conspicuously distinguishes the lords of the Sidhe from mortal kings and heroes is their control of magic, and it is this rather than the notion of divinity which characterizes their role in most of the early literature. In this respect, the early literary tale and the modern folk tale are at one. Theirs is an idealized magic counterpart of the natural world into which mortal men rarely intrude, except by invitation or by accident. Conversely, the people of the Sidhe do not normally intervene in the affairs of men, and the idea that men should invoke them as deities is almost entirely absent. But it would be unwise to assume too readily that this was always so. There are at least two considerations to be kept in mind. In the first place, while the attitude of the monastic redactors to the traditions of native paganism was a remarkably liberal one, it nevertheless preserved its own order of emphasis, and there were certain matters on which it allowed little compromise. Supplication and adoration of the native deities would have been one of these. An 8th century hymn declares that until St. Patrick preached the gospel, the Irish people adored the gods of the Sidhe. St. Patrick knew his priorities, and so presumably did the clerical literati of later centuries. The second consideration is less obvious, but no less important. We know that the Celts were not the first people to settle in Ireland, and it would be unrealistic to suppose that the traditions and beliefs of the indigenous population were annulled by their arrival. There is, in fact, a strong presumption that the literary account is coloured by this popular substratum, which came into its own once more as the Celtic gods were depreciated through the establishment of Christianity and the influence of its teaching. And that is something that really has permeated so many of our live streams, and so much of what we've been talking about over the past year and a half, is that there is a job to be done in disentangling what is indigenous or original mythology from what is clearly a clerical or an ecclesiastical scribal intrusion. And that's a job that ever goes on, and so many scholars are employed in that task to the present day, but inspired, no doubt, by the likes of Proinsias Mac Cana and his peers and colleagues of the time, the likes of T.F. O'Reilly, the likes of Nora Chadwick and Miles Dillon, the likes of Alwyn and Brindley Rees. So there you go. There's Miriam O'Gara. I didn't know you were there, Miriam. How are you? And it's great to see you along this evening. Tinkle Tink says, Tua de Paul Daniels, you'll like it, but not a lot. Who remembers Paul Daniels? Yes, indeed. Anyway, thank you all for joining us tonight on our live stream. It's been a great pleasure, as it always is for me, to have you along. don't worry, that's episode number 15. There are 900 books in this library. We have plenty of material to talk about long into the future, and something we've often said that is being repeated wisely, sapiently by Brendan Byrne is that history is written by the victor. Yes, indeed. And Christianity, being a victor of sorts from the 5th century onwards, decided to write its own version of history, which may or may not reflect what was originally considered to be our cosmology, our cosmological origins, or our cosmogony. Just to say, just once more, a very quick mention of the newly arrived from the printer on Friday, the Bowen monograph. All the pre-orders, if they haven't gone out today, the rest are going out tomorrow. Order your copy online on the Mythical Ireland website. And if you want to support Mythical Ireland and help us with the monthly costs, this is the Patreon address just here, patreon.com/Mythical Ireland. Become a patron of Mythical Ireland, and for your support you get lots of extras. I will be making the monthly patron video for patrons only in the coming week, and there'll be lots and lots in that. So I hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, look, I would encourage you all, absolutely. I think that's one that really should be in your library. You know, there are some that you could take or leave, but if you're interested in Irish mythology, there's at least 10 or 12 books that you really should have, and they would constitute sort of 80 or 90% of what you really need to know, unless you want to go into real depth and buy, as I did, the entire of Laura Gowalla in all its volumes, or the entire Edward Gwynne's Metrical Dinshanicus, or an original copy of Hogan's Onomasticon Gaelicum, etc., etc., etc. Burden yourselves. Burden? Is it such a bad burden? Burden yourselves with lots of books and bulging shelves, creaking under the weight of all that beautiful knowledge and wisdom that's there for you to learn and to imbibe. Tom King, wonderful meetup as per usual. Thanks, Anthony. Thank you, Tom. Until next time, always a pleasure. Stay safe. Yes, indeed. Stay safe, everyone. Stay safe and well. An interesting final thought or two, just in relation to things that are happening. You may have seen yesterday's pictures, last night's pictures. I flew my drone over Newgrange Farm yesterday evening, and the most amazing pattern has emerged in the way the wheat crop in Site A is lodging. Site A is a mound with a henge around it, and most of the lodging has happened in the shape of the henge. Now, I think the reason that is happening is because the embankment of the henge contained a lot of stone, and so the soil is shallower under those crops. And I think the lodging is when a crop basically tips over, either at the root or halfway up the stem or some way up the stem. And the reason that can happen, lodging, the reasons are manifold. It can be to do with sudden downpours of heavy rain or hail. It can be to do with wind. It can be to do with over fertile crops. It can be to do with topography and soil type and crop rotation. In this case, I think it's quite clear it's to do with the archaeology underneath. Anyway, what I didn't say in that post was that I had flown over the Drone Henge field yesterday, and Drone Henge is currently under a crop of winter barley, which was planted probably in October of 2020, sometime around then. Not a single sign of it anywhere. I flew the drone over that field, and there is not the tiniest indication. I might share a picture on the Facebook and Instagram after I'm finished here. Not the tiniest single indication that it's there. And yet, 3 years ago, on the 10th of July in 2018, because of a severe drought, the crop marks revealed this subterranean monument in all its glory. The most fascinating thing. But I did notice today that the harvest has begun in Ireland, and all of those fields, which for the last couple of months have looked so lush, full of whether it's wheat or barley or oats or beans or maize or rapeseed, they're all going to vanish over the next few weeks as we head inevitably towards the next celebration in the Celtic calendar, which is Lunasa, and that is really the celebration of the fruits of the harvest. Yes, I love this time of year, but I do two things I don't like to see are the crops being harvested, because that reminds me autumn is inevitably coming. And of course, the shortening of the days, which is happening. One thing that I noticed in the past number of days is that the twilight that we get in the middle of the night has now all but vanished. There is darkness now at night. At midsummer, for about 3 weeks either side of Midsummer's Day here in the Boyne Valley, it doesn't actually ever get fully dark at night. There is a constant twilight there, and that twilight has vanished. So things are moving on, but such is life. Our southern hemisphere friends will no doubt be relishing in all of this and be delighting in the fact that their days are about to start getting longer and they're looking towards summer. Mind you, I'm sure there are times when their winter days are warmer than our summer days. Movanwe, Millward, I'm sure the otters in mid-Wales run around the crops and make interesting shapes. I noticed in my walks by the river, yes, that's something I have seen, deer tracks among crops, you know. But it's fascinating. I did definitely think it was amazing that this is the first season actually since the discovery of Dronehenge in which I haven't seen it. It wasn't visible this year in the crop. And I think if we hadn't had that really wet May, we had a very dry spring, which led to the discovery of the log boats, the dugout canoes in the Boyne River. If it hadn't been for that really wet May, we probably would be in a severe drought situation now, and Dronehenge would be revealed to us in all its glory. But it's a curious thing. There's always something to be seen. And when I flew the drone, I could see the lodging from the ground. But when I flew the drone and I pointed it at Site A, I couldn't believe just how not exactly universally or uniformly conformed to the pattern of the henge. But when you look at the picture of the crop and the lodging of the crop, and you look at older pictures of the henge, you just say, oh, yeah, that's exactly what has happened. The crop isn't able to stand in the shallow soil that sits above the archaeology that is, as I say, not far beneath the ground. Anyway, Ilara Silver Breeze, thank you for your comments. Duty calls, off to the clinic I go. Well, a very good day to you. Have a great one, and we'll see you next time. All that it remains for me to say, apart from, of course, thank you for joining us. It's been my absolute privilege and pleasure and honor, as it always is to bid you Ichawa, a good night, which is for those of you who are in this part of the world, or Lawa, we might say to our Australian friends, good day, mate. And to our American friends, we say, well, look, for the rest of the day, have a great afternoon and have a great evening. Colo sov, if you're going to sleep, sound sleep. Agus slán go fóil. Bye for now. And always, as always, the most important one, which I really, really love. Tog go bogey. Take it easy.